The two procurement nerds are back, and we are, I guess, kind of in event season. Dr. Eloise has been on the road more than me, road showing it. And Dr. Eloise, you attended the DPW New York event, which was it 2 weeks ago now? 3 weeks ago?
Well, yes, when this comes out 2 weeks ago, it was the week of June 9th. So, yeah. So,
Okay.
about 2 weeks ago.
So we did an episode last year about your thoughts and feedback about their big signature event, which takes place in Amsterdam every year. And they've been making a concerted effort to have a bigger brand presence and do more in the US. So the New York event is something they've been playing with for the last couple of years and decided to do it again this year. So let's have you kind of unpack your thoughts around the event, and let's highlight, because hosting in-person events is really, really hard.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of learnings and takeaways that, especially those of us on the go-to-market side that are trying to do events and get more visibility. So I'd also love to have you highlight maybe some of the improvement areas, things that you think that could have gone better, as some feedback for them and for those of us that are in the world of events.
So this marks the second year that DPW has come to the US. I'm a huge, like everybody knows, I'm a big DPW fan, mainly because it is essentially a tech startup. And their flagship event in Amsterdam, as I've talked about extensively, is really just truly amazing. But there's immense demand here in the US for them to bring it here. And so it is
When you say bring it here, you mean their full-blown mass production conference, bringing that here to the States?
I think there's demand for it. I think they are looking to bring that to without sort of, I'm not answering for them. This is my opinion. Because they this was supposed to be 500 people and they had well over 700, and they probably could have sold another couple hundred more tickets.
Oh, so it is almost, I would describe that almost as a mini experience or a mini conference at that volume.
Oh yeah, and it was definitely an experience, and so that, yeah. All the feedback I give on this podcast, I have sent or will send an email to the team. So nothing here is new to them. It's really meant in the spirit, just like we had a whole episode last year on the gift that feedback is, or that direct feedback is. There should be no surprises to anybody.
Yeah, especially when you're putting on events, it's really important to ask for feedback and actually genuinely take the time to read it, because attendees have a really good perspective, and when you're putting on the event, you're sometimes so in the weeds that there's little things that can be missed that you can tweak and improve upon for the next time.
100%. And so I think over 700 people. The vendor expo areas were, I don't know if I sound like an old person, but they were popping or
they
like
were
rocking.
Vibing, Dr. Eloise.
They were vibing. Vibing. Oh my God, I feel so old. Anyway, like the expo, like there was an electricity running through that building that if you weren't careful, your hair would stick up, because it was just that exciting. And they did a really nice job of concentrating it, so you were really in the moment. Actually, one of the funny things about Amsterdam is the Beurs van Berlage, I think I got that right, hopefully, after like 5 years. It's a massive building and they fill it to the gills with people. However, it does feel like there's room to move. This one, it was at capacity, and that, I think that's a good thing, because what it created is this energy of, you are constantly in the flow of people. And I would imagine from a vendor point of view, that was amazing, because there was just nonstop. You weren't in some other room, you were in the mix. So especially,
so it was like what I call that the one room flow. Everything was taking place in the same room.
Right. Now, to be fair, there were 3 rooms, or one massive room where there was the main stage and seating area and food. Then there was another room which actually was the established startups, which connected to the front of the entrance. So you had naturally everybody walking through the main vendors, and then there was yet another room that was the emerging startups. And I mean, anytime you walk through the room with the established vendors to get to and from the main stage, or like you're just immersed in all of the established startups. And I mean, I think from their point of view, that's great. That like I think that's for that had to have been like, because all I saw was just people at their booths. And you kind of like what when you walk in the door, there was Zip was right there, and then you kind of like go around and head towards the to the main stage, and there you had Oro and Level Path, and I can't remember who else, but it was just like you were running by
procurement
yeah,
orchestration. Let me guess.
yeah, exactly. But they had prominent spots, and I thought that was really good for them, like to really really sort of drive that. Yeah, so I mean, I think, but there were a lot of people, and the good part of that is it was a vibe. Like you were part of something, and I think that is really important. And so wherever you turn around, you are there's stimulus. There's just constant stimulus. Now, as an introvert, it was like taxing me to no end, but I thought it was but it was fun to be there. Like you just, nobody was sitting on the far side, not like engaging with, there was none of that.
So I will say I have not attended a DPW event in person. I was supposed to go, what was that, 2021, and then COVID hit and the world shut down. So I wasn't able to actually use my ticket. But the one thing that really stands out to me about DPW, and many of my colleagues and contacts and connections have attended one of their events, is they have figured out how to create an incredible buzz before, during, and after their events. It's the FOMO, it's the fear of missing out, but the energy and the vibe that they're able to create, I feel like they have just figured it out. And I think other people, once you nail that, you really crack the market of having a successful event.
Yeah, I mean, and they've almost sold out their sponsorships for next year at New York. So, I mean, that's amazing. And there's just enthusiasm. There's enthusiasm on the floor, like when you're walking around, but also, as you said, online, before, during, and after. Like the posts are relentless on LinkedIn. And I think that, and I say that in a very positive way. It's amazing just how much traction they get with people.
Yeah. So this was a 1 or 2 day event?
2-day event. 2-day event. And I'd say the content was really good over 2 days. I did not get to experience a lot of it because I got stuck on the expo floors and talking to people and making the rounds. But
what do you from an agenda perspective, which I didn't look at the agenda, I'm assuming it was a heavy AI theme?
Oh yeah, it was all AI all the time. And when it wasn't AI, it was agentic AI. And when it wasn't agentic AI, it was LLM. Like it was all AI all the time. And I don't say that as a critique, because I actually like that. And I think all the attendees liked it as well. There were a number of sessions that I look forward to watching on video afterwards, because I wasn't able to get to the center stage. That's an Eloise thing, not anybody else thing. But the topics were interesting. Mark Pereira did an interesting one. Sean from Norwest Capital had a
Sean Jacobson. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Sean Jacobson. He did an interesting one that I want to see. So Lauren Hyman from Pepsi also. So there's some good content waiting out there that I didn't get to see, but I'm looking forward to watching it on video.
So let's talk about any key learnings or takeaways from your 2 days at the event, knowing you didn't have time to attend a lot of the sessions, but just conversations or things that stood out to you.
So I think a couple of takeaways. So I was talking to Connect House this morning because I give them some advice or just giving them feedback on their session that they had here in the Bay Area a few months ago. That we got into this discussion about the app and do you need an app for a conference? And so I think as sort of, I don't know, it's an interesting thing because the only thing I used the app for was it had my ticket and the schedule. But in general, I hate downloading apps for specific conferences. Now, for DPW, I do it. I get over my little, persnickettiness, but I think as an attendee, it doesn't offer me much other than the agenda. So, and maybe that's good. So I thought that was like that always sort of sticks in my mind because on the way to DPW on day one, I'm like trying to figure out where I'm going with the agenda, and so yeah, I'm not 100% convinced. The app that the DPW uses is pretty amazing, but I only use it for the schedule and for my ticket.
You're not you're not an app networker, where I am the total opposite, and I am looking up, making connections, messaging people. So that also may be a difference, go to market versus not, right? You're a practitioner technically. So I think your role depends on usage.
Right. So I think that's a little bit of the interesting bit. I will tell you that another observation. So every time DPW happens, they blow me away with some idea that I like. Just you have to completely think outside the box. So last year, they had a podcast studio in Amsterdam. This year they had it in New York, but they had a subway car in the in the space, and they had decked it out. There's some images.
I saw the picture. Super cool.
Super cool. I mean, like you can't even like, and I mean, to say that it was like mind blowing is like understatement. It's just like, it was just so cool. You just can't like, and people were congregating at it. And what they did, what was interesting is if you were recording, you could stand outside with headphones and listen in to the people recording, because so I did, as everybody will find out, I interviewed Lauren from Pepsi, and which will you and I will do a wrapper around when that releases. And a whole bunch of people listened while we were doing it, which I thought was fascinating. I like, who does that?
So you grew an organic audience.
Oh yeah, totally. Actually, let me rephrase that. Lauren grew an organic audience because, I mean, we had a really good rapport going, but I was interviewing her and asking her questions, and people were loving her answers. So kudos to her. I would love to have her on with you because I think
we'll have to plug for when we release that interview. Folks should tune in for it. I'm excited to listen myself.
Yeah, I think I'll give you two other learnings and then we can get to the improvements. But there was so I remember I said there's two rooms. So there's three rooms. The sort of the first expo with all the established SaaS procurement players that like they were at the central hub, and but then there was the sort of emerging startups in the other room, and there was a huge dichotomy between the two. You could tell that the established players, they had lots of people, lots of traffic, but there was a real, I can't think of the right word, but like I want to say emotional difference, but it was kind of like, yeah, you all are today, but the emerging players are definitely tomorrow. And there was a ton of interest in the emerging players. And especially from, say, the
How
corporates.
how do they define an emerging player?
I don't know, but that's my word.
Okay.
So think of Daniela at Klupify, Moore and Leahy at Opstream. I think the guy's name was Jason at Deductor.
Early, like 5
Yeah.
years or less.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. A Conrad was in there. I think Conrad was in there. Anyway, but there was just such, I guess, let me rephrase it. There were really interesting solutions that represented AI native. You got a little AI native with like Level Path in the other room. But I mean, these are folks that are less than 10 people doing the real early stage work. And that I watched a lot of people get very excited about the stuff on that room.
Which is really fun to have the opportunity to highlight the innovators and creators, because oftentimes conferences are very cost prohibitive. And
Yep.
so it eliminates the early entrants, or, kind of that startup, and it only focuses on larger, more established players. So love the focus on the innovation.
Yeah. And so that was really, and actually DBW does a good job of attracting those, but I find at Amsterdam they just kind of blend in with everybody else. So you just like walk around, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is where the emerging folks are. And so I don't mean to be pejorative about this, but it's kind of like they're just off in the back. And if you happen to find them, and the way the layout worked in New York was, ooh, that room is for the cool kids. And so it kind of drew people in, like the room drew people in. And then you found out that these are folks doing like super amazing things. So
clear messaging, right? On
yeah.
I wonder if they'll incorporate that in their October event.
Yeah. And I think that may have been just sort of like structurally how it worked out, that you just put them over there, but that created a cool vibe. I don't know. Everything's a vibe these days. Then the only other thing that was, there was a lot of cool things. And of course we're starting with the premise that I love all things DPW. So like, this is just sort of highlighting a few key things and learnings. But what I will say is Archlet, Cievo, and Oro did a private event off the end of day one. And it was, forgive my language, you might want to cover your ears, but it was called AI fuck ups. And so I forget what else it was called, but something about the key was AI fuck ups. And
I'll tell you what, that's a darn catchy name.
Exactly.
Right? No one's gonna forget that.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't really use, especially when it's like internally at Kearney, like the occasional F word might drop, or like if somebody catches me when I'm cranky. But this was a room full of business folks, executives, like Walt Charles was so I moderated a panel and Walt Charles was on it, and he's 7-time CPO, old school, like, he's really well established, and he's dropping F-bombs, and, I'm dropping them. And because we're talking about our collective ups. And what I will say about like that session was just brilliant, and it was cathartic because Lucas, the founder of Archlet, talked about some of his, a couple of his, and you could just see the tension released from his body as he said that. And I had a couple, and I think I may have mentioned this on last week's episode when I was talking about my 25 years. I talked about how I didn't put a number to it in the podcast, but I did at that night, and I'll give you the number now. But I wasted at least $3 million of the firm's money trying to develop procurement performance management, not once, but twice. And so to say, I've never said that publicly.
And you didn't get fired. You're still here.
I know, exactly. That's why I didn't put that number in the last episode, because I didn't want anybody to like, wait a minute, Eloise wasted $3 million. It was over 3 million, even, really, if I'm sort of, but in the moment, I know it was at least $3 million. And so I've never told that publicly. So in the context of a sort of, it was definitely a therapy session for for sure. So,
So let's talk about, so that was kind of some key learnings and highlights. Let's talk about improvement areas. What are things that they could have done better?
yeah, so there was a lot of improvement areas, and again, I attribute this to them operating like a startup, and that's good and bad, because the good comes from that. But there stick 700 people in an enclosed space that doesn't have a lot of, like, the ceilings are not high in Amsterdam. The ceilings are massive because the building's massive, so you don't quite notice the noise. I could not hear a thing. I was on stage, on the main stage. I couldn't hear a thing. Like, I at the end of day one, I was starting to lose my voice from having to talk so loud. I mean, as an introvert, that just, like, was really difficult to deal with the noise. I guess they had headphones in some of the later sessions. I didn't get the memo about the headphones or what those represented, so I don't even know. So I think there was, like, dealing with the noise, especially on the main stage. I think that's a real big problem. That needs to be solved. I don't know how you solve it, but it really it was distracting. It was like something that I just really could not, like, get past. So that's number one. There was an issue with the food. I didn't get food there, so I don't know what it was. So maybe somebody can post that in the comments. Anyway, the line to get into the building. And again, it was down the block when I arrived, and I arrived like 15, 20 minutes before. Actually, it was about 20 minutes before the festivities kicked off. The line was down the block when I got there. And then shortly thereafter, and I was up, I was the second speaker after the opening. So fortunately, Matthias walked me in, or otherwise I would have missed my speaking slot.
I was going to ask, I wonder how long it took folks to get in. Definitely sounds like a check-in malfunction.
Right. And around the line eventually went around the corner. So that's how long it was. And I don't know why, because in Amsterdam, it moves. It, like, there is no line. I think there was one person, and I got there right as it started last year on day one. I got my badge and I was up ready to go into the
I wonder
stage.
if they had a lot more people show than they were expecting and didn't staff accordingly.
Yeah, I don't know, and it was also warm. And so I think it was Saatchi that encouraged them to start handing out water bottles to the people in line. I hope it was Saatchi, but anyway, so that needed some tuning, certainly some fine tuning, because it was apparently very slow to get in. And what was kind of funny about that, though, is they did have a brass band playing there. So if you were standing in line, you were listening to the brass band, which I thought that part was cool.
You were entertained while being angry and sweaty.
Exactly. And then the other one that really stood out to me, and this is going to lead sort of into a sort of, I think, a discussion point for you and I. There was a lot of plastic, and that really bothered me, because all the drinks were in plastic, or at least all the water was in there was
meaning not the refill stations where you bring a
not
bottle.
The refill station. There were no refill stations. It was all plastic bottles. And I've been on an anti-plastic kick, so for sure this is a me thing. And interestingly, I hosted a thing in Carney's office on Friday. It was all plastic, and so, like, there's work for all of us to do, but all I saw was everywhere I looked was plastic bottles, and that was really disappointing, because it's like some sessions we're talking about sustainability, or at least and some of the solutions, and I think I know we can do better. And because in Amsterdam, they have the water refill stations,
especially in New York. I mean, that's a pretty blue, more democratic, eco-focused state, I would say.
Yeah, so I don't know what was going on there, but and this kind of gets to what I wanted to. But that was really sort of like jarring to me. And I kind of like, so this for you, what I was thinking about is like, I feel like this could be an opportunity for vendors to provide either branded water bottles, or I have one of these self-cleaning ones, which I think
Yeah.
you have the
The
one with the,
from our
yeah,
from our pack our
yeah,
travel tip show, where it
yeah.
comes with a filter, so you can just fill anywhere. You don't have to worry about filtered water because it's built in.
Yeah. So, and I got one that has a self-cleaning thing that you charge anyway. So, um, or sort of competition between the startups to see who can have the greenest presence on the expo floor. Like, I think there's a lot you can do with it. And I didn't think about it until I realized, wow, we're just generating a lot of plastic here at this. And um, so I think you enlist the vendors and sort of give them a green target and make it like maybe, I don't know, make it a competition of some variety. And then announce to the attendees in advance, like, bring your bottle. There's no, like, bring your reusable bottle or whatever, because we're not providing that kind of
Or
stuff.
that's a sponsorship opportunity, and
For
provide a
sure.
water bottle to everyone with the logo and a cool phrase on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought from a marketing point of view, like, we could turn that, what is it, negative into a positive. I think, and and so now that I'm on this anti-plastic kick, I notice things. So this is a good and a bad. So Level Path had these little, I don't know where my bag is, but these little mini Tic Tac containers, which has like about 8 or 10 Tic Tacs in them, but they're just small. Brilliant idea. I love, 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 love. And I just like, I grabbed a ton of those and I ate them because I love Tic Tacs. And it was very, very smart. But also, every time I grabbed one
Yeah,
and ate it, like,
you
I was
got
generating.
something to dispose.
Yeah. So I feel like, again, and this is just a broader conference thing. While you have water stations, I wonder if you can have candy stations, like a gumball machine, or a thing where you come up with your, fill your little thing with Tic Tacs or something. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more innovation to happen on that front.
So one of my favorite food booths, this was at an ISM, gosh, in Houston, maybe 6 years ago. This was actually Denali. They did a trail mix making station at their booth.
Nice.
So you got to pick your different types of nuts and seeds and chocolates. And I thought the food was horrible at the conference, like literally was awful. And there wasn't enough food. And so everyone was starving. And so people are like, we love trail mix. And so it just drove a ton of traffic from a volume perspective. But I also think that's kind of creative and maybe something kind of to think about for other folks.
Yeah. And then I think this last bit is not so, this is a more me thing, but I wasn't the only one that struggled with this. And I'll say DPW does a good job with this, but I actually think this is a broader issue to think about. So DPW, the badges are electronic. So if you're wearing a badge and I'm wearing a badge and I want to exchange information, we just push the button and it passes it, which is great. Love that. But the question of, like, okay, I meet you at dinner, let's exchange information because we don't have the badges at dinner. And I am the biggest offender of this, is like, what's the thing in LinkedIn where I can do the QR code? How can I find that? And I think it was Daniela at DPW last year that did a little tutorial right beforehand. So
Yeah,
kudos to her.
the double click in the space bar. Click on the right hand side.
It's just like, but I'm like those of us, there's a few of us that over 50 that were struggling with this. Like, wait, where's the QR code thing? And then all of us have an app that does the contact card thing, but that's kludgy too. And so I do think coming prepared. I mean, at some point I just started handing out business cards because I was, it's like, all right, I'm just doing analog. But I do think there is a moment to address that, like, sort of, like at least those of us over 40, get your QR codes ready, get your things, and like maybe we need just like an old person tutorial and prep. So anyway.
So next DPW event for you is October in Amsterdam.
That's correct. I believe it's the week of October 8th.
Okay.
And if all goes well, I will be doing a agentic AI masterclass on day 0. So look out for that, assuming that holds true. So
drop us a note in the comments if you attended DPW New York with feedback, both positive and any room for improvements. We're starting to recap as we attend events, just because I feel like we learn so much from not only the sessions, but the interactions and content that you get from talking to so many different people.
Absolutely.